of the Parks, Recreation, and Arts Commission to order. Secretary Clerk, would you please do a roll call?
Parks,
Present.
Commissioner Barraza,
Present.
Commissioner Singh,
Present.
Commissioner Cummings,
Present.
Commissioner Miller,
Present.
Commissioner Oputa,
Present.
Commissioner Vang, Vice Chair Dolan,
I'm here.
and Chair McCoy.
Present. Thank you.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. I do apologize for not being inside the chambers this evening. My son asthma has flared up, so he has been home from school. So that's why I am on Zoom this evening, but I will be in chambers next month. And again, I do apologize.
Thank you.
Can we, yes,
I was just saying
we
thank
will,
you.
okay, thank you. We will now begin the Pledge of Allegiance. Will everyone please stand? Ready? Salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. We will start with the approval of the agenda. Secretary, are there any changes to the agenda or any proposed changes to the agenda?
There have been no changes to the agenda.
Is there a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Thank you, Vice Chair Dolan. Is there a second?
I'll second. Cummings.
Thank you, Commissioner Cummings. Secretary, please conduct a roll call vote.
Commissioner Parks,
Yes.
Commissioner Barraza,
Yes.
Commissioner Singh,
Yes.
Commissioner Cummings,
Yes.
Commissioner Miller,
Yes.
Commissioner Oputa,
Yes.
Vice Chair Dolan,
Yes.
and Chair McCoy.
Yes.
All right, the motion has passed. It was motion by Vice Chair Dolan, second by Commissioner Cummings, with a vote of
Thank you. We will now move on to subcommittee reports. This item is a discussion item for the commission and no public comments will be taken related to this item. Does the Cultural Arts Plan Subcommittee have an update it would like to provide to the commission?
Chair McCoy, this is Commissioner Parks. I don't think we have an update at this time, but I'm hopeful that we'll have an update from the administration when we get to that point.
Thank you, Commissioner Parks. Does the Parks Master Plan Subcommittee have an update it would like to provide to this commission?
Chair McCoy, this is Commissioner Cummings, and there is no update this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Cummings. We will now move on to member reports and comments. As a reminder, this is a time for commission members to report anything they feel important for the public or commission to know, but is not a time for a discussion. Commissioner Parks, do you have any reports or comments?
Not at this time, thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Singh, do you have any reports or comments?
No reports or comments. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Barraza, do you have any reports or comments?
Madam Chair, I just wanted to point out that the Parks Master Plan Subcommittee has not had meetings, and I hope that we are scheduled as soon as possible a meeting so that we can not delay the whole process because we have not had any meetings. So I just wanted to remind staff that that's a very important component of the process that I hope it's incorporated. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Miller, do you have any reports or comments?
Nothing at this time, thank you.
Thank you. Vice Chair Dolan, do you have any reports or comments?
Nothing at this time, thank you.
Thank you. Did I miss anyone in the chambers?
You missed Commissioner
You
Cummings.
did.
Dr. Apuda, do you
Yes.
have any reports or comments? I'm so sorry.
No problem. Just a couple of comments. One, just to acknowledge that this is March and we're closing out Women's Herstory Month. appreciate a lot of the programming that has happened. And the other thing I just want to comment on, I don't know if we've mentioned it in this space, and that is to congratulate Professor Lee Herrick of Fresno City College, who is the California Poet Laureate. Like, how amazing is that? I have a personal connection. He was my daughter's mentor. She's a writer, and he mentored her at Fresno City, and she went on to Howard University and Indiana University. So we're very proud of Lee Herrick and his accomplishments.
Thank you, Dr. Apuda, and congratulations to him as well. We will now move on to city administration and park staff reports and comments. Does anyone from the
Chair McCoy?
Yes.
So I'm Commissioner Cummings, and you missed me.
I am so sorry. See, that's why it is so hard to see everyone. I'm so sorry, Commissioner Cummings. You have the floor.
I understand that, and if I wasn't so excited to share the information, I probably wouldn't have noticed. But I wanted to recognize that Tree Fresno had a really great tree planting in partnership with the city of Fresno and parks, and also the Fresno Chaffee Zoo. So this last Friday, March 24th, we planted 79 trees with volunteers, young students from Golden Charter Academy, and the Green Team Youth Ambassador Program from the Fresno Metro Black Chamber of Commerce and Advance Peace. And it was just a marvelous event. Caltrans was also there with the state director on site, Tony Tavares. And there must have been 200 people there, so excited. Chaffee Zoo was a great host for us, and also City of Fresno. So I wanted to recognize that. It takes a long time to sort of plan and get the irrigation in to support the trees and make a plan for, long-term maintenance and care for large canopy trees. And we plant between approximately October and May every year. So it's very exciting when we get implemented a project. So thank you for letting me share.
Thank you, Commissioner Cummings, and congratulations to Tree Fresno for their exciting weekend. I've seen the pictures on social media, and it looks like it was a lot of fun. We will now move on to, first of all, did I forget anyone else in the chambers?
Chair
No one
McCoy-
else?
Chair McCoy,
Okay.
this is Secretary Sturmer. If I could circle us back around to number 5, approval of the minutes, and then we can get on to the city administration. I just want to make sure we don't forget that.
I thought I did that. I did the agenda, huh?
Yes.
Yeah. All right. Are there any changes or proposed changes to the minutes from February 27th, 2023?
We have received no changes.
All right. Is there a motion to approve the minutes?
Cummings will make a motion to approve the minutes.
I'll second.
Thank you, Commissioner Cummings. Is there a second?
I will second.
Thank you, Vice Chair Dolan. Secretary, please conduct a roll call vote.
Yes.
Commissioner Barraza,
Yes.
Commissioner Singh,
Yes.
Commissioner Cummings,
Yes.
Commissioner Miller,
Yes.
Commissioner Oputa,
Yes.
Commissioner, Vice Chair Dolan,
Yes.
and Chair McCoy.
Yes.
All right, motion was passed. It was motioned by Commissioner Cummings, seconded by Vice Dolan, and approved 8-0.
Thank you. Now we will move on to city administration and park staff reports or comments. Does anyone from the administration have any reports or comments for the commission?
Commissioner McCoy, Aaron Aguirre, Parks Director. I just want to start off and thank the park staff. Starting December 21st through March 21st, our staff, along with many other city departments, the police department, facilities, FACTS, we had continuous warming centers open over 90 plus days, and hundreds, if not thousands, of folks coming through the centers. Much needed in these cold nights. I just want to thank my team, the late nights, the phone calls, the weekends, their dedication to the citizens of the city of Fresno as well as the Parks Department. Just want to acknowledge their sacrifices. Again, they were they did it with a smile on their face and a lot of great accomplishments. So I just wanted to publicly note that and thank them for that. In addition to that, we had a busy month of March, the beginning so far, and in portions of February. I don't want to get into too much of the details. I know that'll be covered in tonight's presentation, but we did go through and host 4 community meetings, March 16th through the 18th. Those were to go through the high needs parks and informing the community of the 5-year CIP program. So in those, Romaine was March 16th. We had over 100 attendees come out to that event, so that was a great evening. The next night, March 17th, we had 40+ attending homes, and Dickey Playground on Saturday the 18th at 10 a.m. We had over 60 attendees at that center. And then, of course, Frank H. Ball was later that afternoon, and we had about 25 attend there. So very good community input. We're pleased to announce that. So I just want to get that on the record and inform you all. And I know some of you were involved in some of these and just wanted to put that out for those who may not have been informed. So thank you.
Thank you, Director Aguirre. Does anyone from the park staff have any reports or comments for the commission?
Not at this time.
Thank you. We will now move on to workshops. ID number 23245, workshop, status of in-progress projects funded by Measure P funds. Will someone from the Parks Department please begin the presentation?
Good evening, Commissioners. Edward Chinevere, Assistant Director for the department. So today I have before you a update. It's been about 6 months since the last time we talked about the capital projects at the Parks Department. And in the time since then, we've done just an incredible amount of work across the department. And you know, all of the different city departments and the community meetings that we've been to have just been incredible. So I just wanted to give you a quick update on that. All right, so before we jump in, we have the first slide here, how do projects happen? These are the phases that we'll be presenting the projects to you in, and these are similar to the way that we've presented them up until today. So you've seen what projects are in the planning phase or the initiating and scoping phase. We have projects in an estimating, acquisition, if it is an acquisition project where we're acquiring new property, design, pre-construction, construction, and then of course completed projects. So what I wanted to do today, and of course community outreach is part of that as well, is give you a little bit more detail, because when we go through these projects, you're going to see a lot of them sort of all summarized under design, right? But there is a lot of work that goes on behind the scenes to get a project through these phases. And so we wanted to give you and any folks watching kind of a quick summary of what it really takes to move a project through the processes to make sure that it's compliant and responsive to community needs. And just to highlight all of the work that our team does. So the Parks Department, of course, we have a projects administration team. We're very fortunate to have our new projects administrator here, Summer Rooks, joining the team. And we just recently hired a capital development specialist as well, Joseph. And I just want to call out that in our public works team and in our general services department, we have great people who are working on these projects every day. So I just really quickly want to highlight Francisco and Armando and Nathan, and who am I forgetting? Harlov over in the Public Works team, Debbie and Craig over in the General Services Department. These people are behind the scenes along with the folks from planning and the folks from landscape design, just trying to work through all of this on a daily basis. It takes a lot of us to get these done. So in that first phase, when you see projects that are in planning, and I'll note the timelines that you see here, take them with a grain of salt, because these are kind of, if you think about we're building a brand new park, what does it take to actually construct a brand-new park. We have initiation, 7 to 16 weeks. In that phase, we're ideation and scoping. So what we have from that is sometimes just a word, right? We want lights at Reedy Park, for example. And we take that, we'll do site walks with the Parks Department, we'll do site walks with the project administration team, with any stakeholders who are engaged locally, and really come up with what we call a project charter. So once we've really fully defined all of the scope elements for that project, then we'll have a charter that we'll submit to either our Public Works Department or to our Facilities Department if it's maybe more of a rehabilitation project for an existing facility. That charter then will, the project manager will be assigned from the Public Works team to that project, and they'll begin working on estimating how much that project is actually going to cost based on the scope defined in that charter. From there, and this is kind of an ideal sort of pipeline if you think about how they should flow. A lot of times we have funding before we have a charter, but in an ideal world we would have that project fully scoped, we'd get an estimate, we know how much we need, and then we'd take it to to the city council and do an annual appropriation to acquire the funds to do that, or we'd do a grant application or whatnot. And of course that funding phase, it can take anywhere from, sometimes we already have the funds at the beginning of the project. Sometimes, of course, there's a long time between when you actually have an estimate to when you have a grant application that's awarded and taken to council. Next phase then, once we actually have a project estimate and we've got our funding in place, goes to design procurement. In that phase, and a lot of these are kind of invisible when you see that high level, kind of estimate design. But the design procurement actually does take quite a lot of effort. In that phase, the first step is to develop a request for qualification. So the project manager will take the scope and use that to put together an RFQ that they're going to put out and advertise. We'll receive statements of qualifications or SOQs, and then go through the design consultant selection process, wherein we will have SOQs that have been submitted on paper that we'll review and rank once we've assembled sort of a review panel. We'll narrow it down to the top 3 or 4 and then do interviews with those consultants, select the most qualified consultant, and then we have another proposal. So at that point, then that most qualified consultant will request a proposal from them for the scope of work as defined on the charter. They'll put together that proposal, and then that proposal, once they negotiate the fee, make sure that it's consistent with the scope of the project, that's when the project manager will actually prepare the agreement for execution, for council award first. So that agreement will then go to council, they'll prepare a staff report. Here's when a lot of other city departments will get involved. The city attorney, of course, will review that agreement. Our risk division under our personnel department will review it for any insurance or indemnification provisions. And then it'll finally, of course, go to the city council for award. So once we have that council award, then that agreement can be executed. They'll collect, of course, insurance documents and actually get that consultant on board to begin the design process. So that takes us to the next step there. In the design process, this is the one where the community starts to get really heavily involved. It typically starts with site analysis and outreach preparation. That's key. Typically we think about the project initiation as sort of a kickoff meeting with the consultant and the city staff, but we're also really brainstorming how we can make sure that we do the most comprehensive and appropriate outreach possible at that point. So we'll prepare all of the materials to promote. First we'll come up with a plan for how we're going to conduct the outreach, then how we're going to promote the outreach. And then once we do that, they'll prepare the outreach materials, get all of those translated, and then we'll finally do the community meetings. From there, those community meetings, along with those initial site analyses, those all go into the schematic design, which we'll often call the 30% phase. So the 30% design schematic will be prepared based on that initial community outreach, and then we'll go back to the community with that schematic design and validate that we actually got it right. So once we have the comments back from city staff and from the community on the community outreach, all of that will go back to the consultant, and they'll begin preparing the 60% design development documents. Then, of course, we go through a whole another round of review. That's when we'll get landscape involved. We'll get, anybody from accessibility. So for ADA compliance, making sure that all the path of travels are good. We'll provide all of those comments back. And then the consultant will begin building the 90% bid documents. Now, in tandem with this design process, of course, there's also a permitting process where we're putting the plans into the city's system for planning review for any kind of development permit review or entitlement permits, and an environmental analysis. So every single project will have California Environmental Quality Act, either a categorical exemption or an initial study, which of course involves a lot of steps, including consultation with tribal organizations who've requested to be involved. So lots of things, and we try to run these processes concurrently so that we can keep the project moving as quickly as possible. Although every now and then you run into a project where the CEQA might take a little bit longer, and then that'll actually add to the time frame. So from there, now we have plans that have been put in for permitting. They've gone to building and safety. They've been reviewed for accessibility, for electrical, structural, HVAC, grading, whatever is involved in the scope of that project. Then the specifications will actually be prepared by the consultant and the project manager in consultation with our construction management team under Public Works. And they'll put that whole package together so they can advertise that for bids. So once we receive those bids, then of course we have another department involved, which is our purchasing department. So procurement at that point is really our key player, reviewing those bids to make sure that they're all qualified. Once they've identified the lowest responsive bidder, then the project manager will prepare that contract and take it back to City Council with another staff report and another City Council review for council approval. Once we have the council approval, that's when we get into what can be sometimes the most surprising step, pre-construction, because here's where it can go really fast, or sometimes it can take quite a long time. The contractor then will be bonded. So bonding, insurance, and contract execution, that's all handled by the construction management team under Public Works. They'll have a pre-construction meeting once a contract is in place to go over all of the requirements of the contract, make sure that the contractor is all set up to submit certified payroll documents, and make sure we have an understanding of exactly what the impacts to the site will be. That's when we'll talk about, if you're constructing, a new play space, where are you going to put your materials? Is that going to impact people's access to the existing restroom? How are we going to notify the neighbors? All those kind of things happen at that pre-construction meeting. That's also when we find out about the material lead time, which is a big wild card in a lot of these construction projects, because it could be that they just need 3 to 4 weeks to actually procure the materials that they'll need to do the construction. But sometimes, especially post-pandemic, we've seen some circumstances where it's been closer to 6 months to 12 months even for some specific types of materials. Once the contractor has identified sort of a receipt date for all of the required materials, that's when they'll work back, and construction management will establish a notice to proceed date for when they'll actually get going on that contract. And then we're finally to construction. So that's when they're actually out there. Could be, if it's a smaller project, could be 30 days. If it's a much larger project, like, one of our Milburn and Dakota parks, or, South Peach Avenue, that could be, 6 to 12 months. They'll finish the construction, they'll do all the inspections, and then they'll schedule a site walk with all of the stakeholders. So we'll bring everybody that's been involved in the process up until that point back out to take a look and make sure that it meets all of our expectations. So parks will be there, landscape, all of the folks from construction management and the project management team and the consultant will just make sure that it meets all of our expectations and develop a punch list for any materials, any items that still need to be done at that point. Contractor then typically has 45 days to complete that punch list, and this is when we start talking about ribbon cuttings, and that's when we finally have a park to show to people. So closeout then, of course, is a whole other process to make sure on the back end that we're in compliance with all of the activities throughout the project, that all of the funds have been spent. If they haven't, we know how much is left on the project budget. And then we can finally close out that project and release the contractor. So I just wanted to give you that quick overview because you'll see these projects today that I'm going to show you, but there's so much nuance. If it's a really small project like a roof replacement or a repainting, it can be over before you know it, right? Sometimes if it's something that maybe even has federal funding, it has to go through a whole different layer of NEPA, the National Environmental Protection Agency review, and there's a whole other layer where we're working with the actual granting agency to make sure that we have all of the appropriate documents. Another thing you don't see too, I want to shout out to our fiscal team, Dari Bualamsi, and everybody who works over there on the fiscal side, because those grant projects are another really involved process to really move those projects across the finish line and make sure that we're in compliance on all of those. So with that, project status. So how does a project go? I love this little seed to a 3-leaf plant. It's like a Fresno ash, kind of. So these are the project statuses since October 2022. This first list here, are the projects that are currently in the planning phase. So in this one, these could be anywhere from initiating and scoping. We might have a draft charter. They're kind of moving their way towards having a project manager assigned so that we can really get them going. If you remember the last time we met, there were, I want to say there was something like 100 projects on this list. So this is when I really want to highlight the efforts of that project delivery team, the public works crew, the general services team. We've really moved a lot of projects forward in the pipeline since the last time we met. Some of the projects that are still kind of working their way through that initiating and planning phase are primarily around site furnishings. There are a couple new park design projects in here. El Radka bleacher upgrades. We're working to replace the bleachers out there at El Radka. Dakota Barton new park design. I just want to point out this one is an error. I've got a couple of these that I'll give to Todd later, but this one actually doesn't have any Measure P funding on it at this point. But yeah, that's the parcel that we acquired there at Dakota Barton, and does need to be designed with the general fund and ARPA funding that's on it. At Einstein, we're going to do a new monument sign. Take a look at the pool and do some of the upgrades that were recommended in a previous study. Parking lot, we want to repave that. Out at Granny's, we want to put in some new benches. Hinton site improvements, these are primarily furnishings that will complement the other improvements that we've made out there at Hinton, the new field lighting and the new restroom, so landscaping improvements, picnic areas, things like that. Holmes, the parking lot, we want to take a look at that and make sure we get that slurry sealed. Logan, we've got bleacher upgrades and another monument sign there. And then, of course, the FMFCD, the Fresno Flood Dual Use Basins project. This one received both Measure P and general fund funding in the FY23 budget. So this one is currently working its way through the process. We're meeting with Flood to discuss some prospective basins where we can do some improvements on those, and that's just about to be chartered. Next one here, Reedy site improvements. This one is primarily about lighting in the parking lot at Reedy Park. Roding restroom upgrades, that's to upgrade all of the restrooms out there at Roding. Rotary's picnic area, and Vinland monument sign. I want to note too, Reedy is another one that I'll give to Todd later. That one is also doesn't have any Measure P funding in it. Apologies, we've got 100 and some projects, so please beg your forgiveness on that. Okay, so next one up here is the projects that are in the estimating phase. So now these projects are chartered. There's a project manager assigned. And they are currently in the process of preparing an engineer's estimate, and then that's when we'll really validate that we've got sufficient funding and move them into design. So out there at California Tupman, this is, last time you saw this, this was in that California Tupman Improvements Project. And the specific improvement that we identified primarily through engaging with the community at the California Tupman play structure ribbon cutting was the perimeter wall. So right now there's a fence that kind of surrounds 2 of the 4 sides of the park that is in poor repair, and the residents there would prefer to have a CMU block wall. Lafayette court resurfacing, last time you saw these were all bucketed together under those court resurfacing projects. Since then, we've identified the specific parks. Lafayette is one of those. Of course, the courts out there at Lafayette are in bad need of addressing the surfacing of those. So that would be both the basketball court and the tennis courts. Maxiel Parks South Parcel improvements. So this would be coming out of the Maxiel Parks Improvements Project to incorporate the parcel just south of Maxiel Parks, which was acquired previously under a CAL FIRE grant, to actually move, reorganize the way those walls are positioned and put in some landscape and irrigation improvements to incorporate that parcel into the footprint of Maxiel Parks. Mosqueda, accessible door upgrades. All of the doors out there at Mosqueda that are providing access to the public into or out of the facility will be upgraded with ADA door operators. Mosqueda, the pool fence. We want to take a look at that chain link fence around Mosqueda and replace that with something a little bit nicer. Orchid, this is another one of those court resurfacing projects. Roding as well. The tennis courts all out there at Roding have funding for resurfacing, and that project is underway. Out there at Storyland Playland, we've met with them and taken a site walk and identified a subset of activities that the city can perform, primarily around accessibility and the perimeter fencing. So that's currently in the process of being estimated how much those improvements will take. Veterans Memorial as well. This one is really more like 3 projects because what we're doing here is sort of step 1, taking a look at all of the things that are in poor repair that we can address really quickly. So those are things like painting or carpeting, the areas where the performers are preparing for their performances, things like that. And then step 2 is the stage and rigging. So we actually have a prior study that was done on the stage and the rigging. So we're going to follow that one to actually implement some of the improvements, get a good estimate for what it will actually take to address some of the rigging issues out there at Veterans Memorial. And step 3 is to order some studies that were identified in a previous site assessment done for veterans. Structural, HVAC, plumbing, electrical accessibility, so that we can really lay the groundwork for how to spend the improvement funds that will go to veterans for several years to come. Frank H. Ball, Mariella, Maxie, and Sunset are all part of what we've now called the West Fresno Community Center Rehabilitation Project. So as part of this project, all of these ones received Measure P funds as high needs parks in the FY23 budget. And we have begun the process of creating a single project around all 4 of these parks where we'll engage the community to take a look at that system holistically and identify the long-term capital improvement plans for those 4 parks. As we know, the high needs definition is in place for 3 years. So this would help to inform how those funds would be expended on those centers over the next 3 years. Can't tell you exactly what the scope of it will be because we want to get that from the community. So key to this project is really engaging the community about exactly how they want to use those parks and exactly what sorts of activities they want to be able to do in their neighborhoods. So projects that have moved on to design, these ones, at this point, of course, they're chartered, they've got a project manager, and we're either in the process of procuring a design consultant or we actually have a design consultant on board. This is where a lot of that nuance in the project flow can be lost because a lot of these are at very different places. So El Radka, the dog park improvements, this is to add a small dog park to complement the existing dog park. So that would essentially create both a large dog park out of the footprint of the existing dog park and a new small dog park to complement that. Out there at the senior center, we have identified a consultant that's going to be helping us with conducting outreach to inform the types of amenities and the types of activities that we really want, that the seniors of our community really want to be able to do at the senior center. So that process is underway now, and we should have some updates for you soon, and we'll be sure to bring those back to this commission once we have sort of the meetings scheduled and the outreach plan for the senior center. That'll be a pretty major effort. Dickey Youth Center, we have security improvements. This one is all the way through permitting at this point and is almost done with design. That's to improve the security out there at the parking lot at Dickey Community Center. Think White, restroom rehabilitation. This is to take a look at all of the fixtures, make sure that everything's ADA compliant, that the doors are in good repair, that the paneling is in good repair, replace those fixtures which need to be replaced. Homes, this one is kind of a capital maintenance project. So we identified some wood rot out there at the Holmes Community Center, which is of course a beautiful center, which is just a marquee establishment for that community. So we have a design or an engineer at this point taking a look at the extent of what that damage may be so that they can give us a cost estimate, and we'll have a really good idea about what we need to do to really preserve that roof into the foreseeable future. Lafayette, this is another one of those restroom rehabilitation projects. Of course, Lafayette, I'll also note these restroom rehab projects, we're also taking a look at the drainage and how the floors look. Lafayette comes to mind because it definitely could use some assistance in that department, along with all of the partitions and the fixtures and so forth. Manchester Splash Park. So this one is currently in design procurement, and we are getting ready to take a design agreement to council for this one. So you should be seeing this one showing up on a city council agenda pretty soon. And that one will have additional community engagement to make sure that that splash park is designed in a way that's really responsive to the neighbors near Manchester Park. Maxiel Parks, the HVAC installation, this one is at the 90% phase. And that, of course, is to replace all of those swamp coolers that currently provide really limited cooling in the gymnasium area with full HVAC units. And then these next four here are part of what Aaron was just telling you about, Director Aguirre. We went out to Dickey Playground, Holmes, Romaine, and Frank H. Ball, and I've actually got a slide about these on the next one, so I'll hold on those, but we'll talk a little bit more about those in a moment. This next project we're really excited about. We had play area improvements. Those are shade structures or softball safety surface replacements at a lot of different parks in the FY23 budget. And so really to maximize efficiency, those are all being done under a single design and construction process. So that's gonna take care of making sure that all of these play structures are assessed to ensure that they're in a condition that is sustainable, where they'll be in good repair for a good long while. And also accessibility. So we're taking a look at all of the paths of travel into those play structures and where needed, making adjustments to those. Taking a look at site furnishings, is there adequate seating, benches, picnic tables, et cetera? And most importantly, making sure that they all have softball safety surface, where most of them actually currently have wood mulch safety surface and shade over all of the structures. So that's at Bigby Villa Park, California Tupman, Cary, Lafayette, Maxiel Parks, Nielsen, Orchid, Romaine, Rotary East, and Sunnyside. And there's actually an 11th in here, but it doesn't have any Measure P funding. That one's Vinland. Roding is also receiving play structure improvements. In fact, all of those play structures at Roding will be replaced as part of this project so that they are fully functional for a good long while. And all of these play structures, there's a path of travel that's been identified so that it's fully wheelchair accessible, and where needed, the nearest parking stalls are actually being upgraded to accessible stalls as well. And then finally, of course, out at Roding, lighting improvements to the northernmost courts. which will bring those into kind of the pickleball realm. So we'll have pickleball restriping, resurfacing, and lighting improvements on those northernmost 3 courts at Roding. So as I mentioned, I want to give you a couple project highlights or spotlights. This one is for the Measure P High Needs Parks, which is currently in design. This one is really an outreach project. So this contract will end once we've identified a conceptual site plan. But it's going to inform how we deploy improvements at all 4 of these parks for the next few years. And in fact, one of these Frank H. Ball you've already seen that was on the West Fresno Community Center Rehabilitation Project. So that project will take the output of this as its starting line. So the community engagement that we've done as part of this project will identify sort of that high-level conceptual site plan, which the design consultant that we bring on board to actually prepare plans for Frank H. Ball will use. But really, this project is a culmination of all of the work that this commission has done over the past, is it 2 years now, almost? And starting with identifying those factors that you'll use to determine what a high needs park is, coming up with the high needs park definition, going through the park prioritization process to identify out of those high needs parks which ones are most in need of investment, and then ultimately identifying 4 projects that WRT, our consultant, has been working with us on to create a conceptual site plan which will inform the capital improvement plan at these parks over the next few years. So those, of course, are Romaine, Dickey, Holmes, and Frank H. Ball. All 4 of these parks, we did extensive community engagement. There were stakeholder meetings with the people who are most intimately involved in those parks. The people who actually host leagues or lease facilities, or the CDC organizations that are most engaged in those communities. We've invited all of those people to sort of a focus group style to get that initial wave of input. The community survey then was launched and distributed. We had our partners, CEFSETA and ENP, help us distribute those surveys door to door and show up at schools and park events with pop-up activities to collect as much input from those communities as we possibly could. Finally, we did these community meetings last weekend, or a week ago last weekend. Thursday, of course, we were out there at Romaine Park, over 100 folks. Really interesting format to this community engagement because we had stations set up where we kind of give them the idea of here's how we got here, the Measure P funding, what it does for your community. And here's this kind of concept plan that our consultants developed. It's in no way final, and we just really want to know what you think about it. And these are the 4 areas that they've asked for your specific input on. And then we had stations, sort of satellite stations around the parks, where we would walk people over and they would take a look. Okay, so this is where on the plan you're proposing to put a splash pad, right? And we'd get their input about what they thought about that. So all 4 of these plans, I know it's a lot to take in. Like I said, very, very much preliminary work in progress, and at this point, still taking community input on these 4 projects. So the community input that we've received is going to go, WRT and the Parks Department, we're going to sit down and take a look at how we refine these concepts based on the input that we received to come up with sort of a final concept plan. Now, even that final concept plan, though, and with the priority ranking for the different phases or locations, is still going to receive, there's still going to be more community input once we actually bring on a design consultant with a landscape architect and structural engineer, where we'll actually do additional community outreach like we're doing for Frank H. Ball. So there will be lots and lots of opportunity for input on all 4 of those projects. So next up, projects then in pre-construction. So we've got a lot. As I noted, we've got a lot of long lead times right now system-wide. We've got 5 here, the accessible picnic areas. These were actually primarily funded with Proposition 68 funds, and they'll all result in a picnic area, barbecue, accessible path, and accessible waste receptacle for each of those parks. So that's at Lafayette, Robinson, Sunnyside, California, Tubman, and Logan. El Radca is receiving some irrigation upgrades to make sure that the irrigation out there is sufficient to do all of the watering that's needed for both the park and the community garden. Fink White, the splash pad. So Fink White, we just had the pre-construction meeting for Fink White today. So we're really excited about that. And Fink White, this of course was a CDBG project originally with some CDBG funding, but the Measure P funding that was recommended by this commission and approved by the city council is what has allowed us to finish this one up. So it's going to be a few weeks at this point before we know exactly how long it's going to take for all of their materials to come in, and then we'll finally have hopefully a date that we can tell the community we're going to break ground and actually build this splash pad at Fink White. So moving along. JSK, the play structure replacement. That one also is currently in pre-construction. We've had the meeting, and we're just waiting for the contractor to tell us when they anticipate, once they've confirmed those receipt dates for the play equipment. Quigley HVAC, I think this one has actually moved since I put it on this slide. This one is now in construction, I believe. Yeah, I have a yes from Summer. So this one is to add an additional HVAC unit out there at Quigley. The one that's there is just insufficient to really fully cool that entire center. And the Roding Dog Park relocation. So this project, of course, went through a lengthy CEQA process and has finally cleared all hurdles. We've had the pre-construction meeting. And the contractor has placed their orders. So we should have a date very soon about when the Roding Dog Park relocation project will actually break ground. The Science Mobile improvements, these are kind of to take a look at the identity of our Science Mobile and the quality of all the exhibits in there. And we've made some orders for some improvements for the Science Mobile. That's the mobile science unit operated by our science program based out of Highway City. Sunset Community Center roof repairs. This is kind of taking a look at the center area where the utility well is. There's some serious roof repair that needs to be done there, and that's currently in the pre-construction phase. So we should have some watertight roofing out there at Sunset very soon. Vinland court resurfacing. This one is just waiting for the weather to get to improve. And the Vinland restroom upgrades, similar to the other restroom upgrade projects. This one is also moved, I believe. Yes, we have a porta potty out there and a sign instructing folks that the restroom is currently under construction. So Vinland is on the move. So JSK Play Area, this is our next project spotlight. So this is artistic rendering of the improvements that are going to be made out there at JSK. Of course, all new softball safety surfacing and all new play equipment for a pretty extensive and a really nicely sized play area out there at JSK. So we're really excited to break ground on that one, and hopefully we'll have the date any day now. So projects in construction, we have the Paul Capriolio Community Center. That's the north building. So the north building of the Cap Community Center is just about done. So we should have news for this commission any day now about a ribbon cutting out there at the CAP Center. We've got furnishings on order, and we've got staff ready to go. Mosqueda, Ted C. Wills, and the Regional Sports Complex. We have HVAC improvements. These are all being done as part of our sustainability project. And we'll receive full new HVAC units. Granny's, the security and pathway lighting improvement project, this one is just about done. So we should have a substantial completion on this one any day now. We've got the contractor out there just wrapping things up. Pillabos, turf rehabilitation and irrigation upgrade. You may have seen some of our notices or seen the fencing up there at Pillabos, but Pillabos is currently closed while the irrigation gets, not Pillabos Park, but the Pillabos soccer fields are closed. Pillabos is still open for business. But the soccer fields are closed while the irrigation gets upgraded, and then they'll be closed to keep folks off of the turf while it gets established for the next few months. And Van Ness and Weldon, the new park at Van Ness, I have a feature on, so I'll just jump to that. So the new park space at Van Ness and Weldon, of course, this one was completed in several phases. First, we had the street work that was constructed, all of the, the new accessible parking stalls, the on-street parking, and all of the sidewalks, really associated with taking that median island that was there and that right-hand turn lane and combining that with the existing parcel that we acquired to create more space, a larger footprint for our park. And then also phase 2, there was some environmental remediation that was done as part of that project. And we are well on our way to our final phase, which is park construction. And this park is at the point where we're just waiting for to verify some lead times on some exercise equipment and play equipment, and then we should have a date when we're going to break ground on this one too. And so, of course, that park is, I've said it many times, is probably going to be the first net new green space that's added with Measure P funds. So it's going to be a really exciting day when we get to cut that ribbon. It's going to remove the existing thrift store that's there, replace that with this family-focused play area. We've got 3 exercise stations, bocce ball court. We're designing some new waste receptacles through a design contest with the Fresno High art students. To match the other sort of mosaic tiled waste receptacles along the street there at Van Ness. So really exciting things coming for Van Ness and Weldon. And then, of course, the Paul Capriolio Community Center, which is going to be the second new community center that we've opened, if you count the link at Blackstone, with help from Measure P. And that one will have kind of 3 primary rooms as part of the north building, one really focused on teen and youth activities, one focused on senior activities, and one sort of lobby area in the middle. And while that center is operating, we're going to get to work on rehabilitation for the south building as well, which will eventually become the dedicated senior location. So should be hearing about a ribbon cutting on that one very soon. All right, completed. These are just the ones that were completed since the last time we met. So Belcher, restroom roof replacement, that's been completed. Fink White, we've repainted the community center. Logan parking lot was resurfaced. We put in some new accessible ramps, replaced the restroom roof out there at Logan as well. Made some large capital maintenance repairs to the walk-in refrigerator at Mariella Brown. Finished the south parking lot at Romaine, so that's just south of the skate park. So there's a nice new parking lot with beautiful landscaping for folks to park in at Romaine. And Woodward shade sail replacements. These are both over the amphitheater as well as over all of the tot lots. So we replaced all those shade sails to preserve those for the foreseeable future. And the link at Blackstone. So that one, actually we had our ribbon cutting out there. It was primarily funded through an agreement with the developer, but Measure P did come in with a little bit of funding to help us finish furnishing that center. And also, I want to highlight the energy efficiency project under our sustainability division, where they've upgraded the lighting at 50 parks, including field lighting, interior lighting, site lighting, to really improve the energy efficiency at virtually no cost to the city. Citywide, too, we've done tree trimming at 21 parks over the course of the past few months. So just a couple quick projects. Spotlights there. There's our new shade sail over there at the Woodward Amphitheater. Of course, we replaced the tot lots, too. And there's a photo of our ribbon cutting for the new senior center at the link at Blackstone, which has been operating for several months now. First, new dedicated senior space for the Parks Department. It's really exciting and a great facility for our senior program to be operating out of. So with that, I do also want to just note that this is a portion of the portfolio. We also have a significant number of additional projects that only have general fund or CDBG or ARPA funds, for example. And a lot of those projects have been underway for a lot longer than these ones. And so while you're seeing about half of the portfolio here, there's a lot of other exciting things happening around the department. So with that, I'll end my presentation and happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you so much. That was a very detailed and well put together presentation. Appreciate all the information that was given out. I have a couple of questions when it comes to regarding and planning. I noticed that there has been some site improvements on the outside of Hinton Center. Is there any discussion about improving the inside of Hinton Center? It needs a lot of TLC.
Commissioner McQuaid, I can take that question. The actual community center is not owned by the city of Fresno. That's actually owned by
Okay.
Hinton, so we do not have any plans to update or rehab the facility.
Got it. Thank you. That was my only question on that. Does any of the other commissioners have any other questions regarding the presentation?
Chair McCoy, this is Commissioner Parks. I have just a couple of questions, if I may.
Absolutely, you have the floor.
Awesome, thank you so much. I actually had the day off from work today, so I spent a little bit of time visiting some of these parks. I went on a tour of Fresno Park System, and it was really helpful to have the graphics that you included in the presentation and to stand on the site and say, oh my gosh, this is gonna be amazing when we get to this point. So thank you for the pictures and everything that you included. I did notice that at the Vanis and Weldon site, there is signage referencing Measure P, and I didn't see that in any of the other parks I visited, and I wrote them down. I visited the Hinton Parks. I wanted to see the new restrooms. Very exciting. Holmes, Remain, JSK, and then Vanis and Weldon. So I was just curious how it's determined where that kind of signage goes so that our community knows what is being funded by Measure P and can celebrate that.
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think the reason that Van Ness and Weldon has one was because it was such a marquee project. It's a new park that we're constructing with some pretty serious site impacts that we wanted to make sure people were aware of. That being said, I think we are certainly open and eager to get the word out more about all of the improvements that we're doing. In a lot of ways, we've just been doing them so fast that we haven't taken the time maybe to celebrate and as much as we should have.
I think that it would be a meaningful thing for the community because certainly I've heard like nothing's happening and obviously a lot is happening, and so let's tie this great work to the funding and the tax revenue that we're all contributing. One other question, I really appreciated seeing the timeline and understanding more about how long it really takes for projects to happen. Can you, to the extent that you can you tell us a little bit more about how the department approaches budgeting for this from year to year? Because clearly, many projects take multiple years to come to fruition, and that would be helpful for me just as we're going into this next budget cycle.
Sure. Well, we've learned a lot over the past year. And generally, where we're at right now is we have kind of a 5-year outlook about what's coming in from Measure P, but we don't limit ourselves to just what the Measure P revenue flows are. We've actually are trying to find a way to move some of these projects that you see here all the way through construction by pursuing additional funds through grants, or even at this point, some interesting partnerships. We're doing the University Park, for example, with Kaboom, as kind of this really pilot project for how we can leverage private and foundation funds to increase the impact from Measure P. I think that one actually only has general fund in it, though. So. But yeah, so as far as budget goes, we build that 5-year plan. We come to you for your recommendations, and that all goes into the 5-year plan, which then gets submitted to the city manager and mayor's office for consideration in the preparation of the mayor's budget, which will be presented to council in a month or so.
We're expecting to receive the mayor's budget sometime late April, or late May like we did last year. And then on that note that Ed mentioned, with the come to the 5-year capital, you'll notice years ago when parks would budget, they would budget the full amount in 1 year. But seeing the timelines that we have here and seeing that that's unrealistic, especially on a large scale project, let's just say an $8.5 million. So what we've done, we've kind of changed how we budget those dollars. So over that 5-year span, you'll see, for instance, the first year you'll have maybe your outreach, maybe you'll have your design contract, and then the following year, depending on the timeline of that design, you may see actual construction dollars, or that may actually roll over to the following year, things of that nature. So you won't see a large $8.5 million in 1 year. Based on the timeline, as you can see, we won't be able to spend that, which will then show us carrying that over. So they're a lot more realistic as we move forward with our budgets and expectations.
That's great. That's what I was kind of curious about, if we were moving more in that direction of budgeting. Wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Parks. Does any of our other commissioners have any questions regarding this presentation?
Madam Chair, I don't have a question. Well, maybe one is a question and a comment, if I may.
You have the floor, Dr. Apuda.
First of all, Ed, thank you. As Madam Chair said, that was a very well done and thorough report. I have a question, and I've noticed this before, and I've wanted to call it to our attention, and that is when there are ribbon cuttings and events like that, can we as commissioners get invitations to that? I know I've seen things on the news, and I'm like, oh, I would have liked to have been there.
Yeah,
you see, I'm looking.
And
absolutely, yes.
And Dr. Pitt, a lot of those times, as Ed mentioned, those ribbon cuttings, for instance, the link, it's kind of moving, and it's hard to sit here and say, in 2 weeks, we're going to cut the ribbon. Let's say we have a PG&E issue. So oftentimes, we are trying to plan those as best we can, and we'll work with the commission on as far in advance as we can, any notification, if we know in advance when we truly are going to cut a ribbon or grand opening type of deal. We can work
And
with.
I was thinking email, not necessarily in this meeting, but
Right.
just send us an email and say, this is happening in 2 hours. No. But that would be great. And the other thing, from a cultural perspective, representation matters. And all of these parks have names, and the names have meaning. And I noticed for, you can help me out. Yeah, that you say JSK. And I think it would be important to say the name of the park, even if it's, like, what is it, Fink White, right? Even if it's Sing Cholera, rather than the initials. So that's just something for you all to give some thought to.
Thank you, Dr. Apuda. Does any other commissioners have any questions or comments regarding this presentation?
So I had a question in regards to the court resurfacing. Which courts, at Vinland Park, which courts are those?
So those are the existing courts out there at Vinland Park, the two tennis courts that are, right now they're striped for tennis and pickleball, but this will stripe them for tennis, volleyball, and pickleball.
Cool, all right, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Madam Chair, this is Commissioner Barraza, if I could ask a couple of questions.
Absolutely, Commissioner Barraza, you have the floor.
Thank you. I noticed under your design section under the category Community Outreach, you have obviously conversations with the community. I noticed that I saw at least a couple of new parks. Is it part of your protocol that you survey the residents of the area when you implement those projects? Do you do that for all new parks in our city?
Yeah, that's a great question. And the sort of standard, I would say we haven't historically had a one-size-fits-all approach for how we tackle new parks, but we've learned a lot over the past year. And so making sure that we have multiple modes of outreach is really important, we've discovered, because some people are much more comfortable filling out a online survey. Others, they're only going to answer questions if you are in their driveway, right? So we want to make sure that we create multiple modes for people to engage. I think you will, for any new park going forward, you'll likely see a survey effort. It might change a little bit as we continue to learn more about what works and what doesn't, but making sure that we cast a broad net to get as much input as possible will be a continuing theme.
Because I'd like to remind you that we've had a lot of surveys already performed as part of the Measure P, whether it's for the development of the master plan or for the arts, for all kinds of surveys. So I hope we're utilizing the results of those surveys as you engage in designing parks in various regions of our city. I just wanted to make that observation because sometimes I've heard comments from the community that appears to be overkill when you keep surveying the community, and I just wanted to make that observation. The other question I don't know if you want to say anything, but I have another question on something else.
I agree. There's definitely survey fatigue out there, and we recognize that. So as Ed mentioned, different modes of obtaining that information. Each park is unique in design and the amenities it brings. So yeah, I think the different modes that we have kind of, whether it's a survey, which we try to stay away from because we realize that there have been a lot of surveys recently, community outreach, pop-up events, things of that nature have shown to be successful in getting the information from the community. So yeah, we do look at different.
Thank you. The other question pertains to Pillowbus Park. And thank you very much because you know it has been an ongoing concern that the grass looks ugly and it's all dirt. The question I have is on the relocation of activities that occur at the park. I've heard people complain at Holmes Playground that they were kicked out of that park to accommodate the folks that came from Pillowbus. I don't know if that's true or not, but I think that's important that at times it may be necessary to stop the activities and just tell them, hey, you can't use the park, period. Or if you're able to accommodate them, that's wonderful. But I think moving other people from other locations at the expense of somebody that they feel that have more influence than some areas. But I don't know if you can comment on that. How did you handle that?
Yeah, so the reservations at Pillowbus, those folks were essentially just given the option to access our existing reservation system. So if there was a park without a standing reservation, they could choose that park. And if it's a paid reservation taking place in a park where maybe people are used to being able to just drop in without having a reservation, I think that's where we're seeing the majority of the conflict at this point.
Thank you. Then my last question, it's a little bit hypothetical, so if you cannot answer it now, that's okay, but I'll be asking the same question later on. I used to do capital projects for Fresno County, so I kind of have a little bit of background. When we start implementing projects related to the arts, will there be an opportunity for merging projects with the standard capital projects related to parks and the arts components? Because I would think that the arts projects will also be incorporated to the parks. So there may be some joint projects, and I don't know if you're right now able to comment on that or if you want to wait until we get going with those projects, but that's a question that I'll be asking because we're always trying to find ways to save money and to use economies of scale whenever possible. I mean, that happens, maybe it is possible, maybe it isn't, but I wanted to ask you that.
And Commissioner Barraza, I'll chime in. I think it is a little too early as we develop the cultural arts plan and the guidelines, what those may look like. I think at that point in time, we'll be able to answer that question better than we can at this date.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Barraza. Any other commissioners have any questions or comments regarding this presentation? All right, we will now move on to hearings. ID number 23-502, hearing to receive public input on allocations related to Measure P. updates to the park master plan and cultural arts plan, and annual Parks Department budget and capital improvement plans. Would any member of the public like to make a comment regarding this item? You will
Excuse me.
have,
Sorry, Chair McCoy. We do have workshop 9B that we do need to go over.
is that on here? Oh, I need to put my glasses on, I'm sorry.
No worries.
I apologize. 9B, ID number 23-508, workshop overview of Measure P ordinance as it pertains to the commission's authority as outlined in ordinance section 7-1509E Parks. Would someone from the Parks Department please begin the presentation?
Good evening, Chair McCoy, Aaron Aguirre, Parks Director. Printed for you is the presentation as well. So today's workshop is an overview of the Measure P ordinance as it pertains to the Commissioner's authority and the roles. Just want to go through some of these items. I know you all know them by heart. I don't have any pictures like Ed, so it's all text, so bear with me here. Do I have the control? Perfect. So Parks, Rec, and Arts Commission primary authority is to conduct hearings and receive public input on allocations related to the ordinance, updates to the Parks Master Plan, Cultural Arts Plan, and annual Parks Department budget and capital improvement plans, and make recommendations to the City Council. Item 2 is to review city staff recommendations for budget allocations related to this ordinance to ensure consistency with the ordinance and expenditure plan. Also make recommendations to council for adoption of expenditures in connection with the annual budget process and any amendments thereto, as stated in section 7-1506. Item 3, review and recommend for city adoption guidelines for competitive grant programs established with funds from this measure. Oversee development and recommend City Council adoption of the Cultural Arts Plan and subsequent updates. Review and make recommendations to the Mayor, City Council on fees related to parks, trails, and open space. Also review the Controller's annual independent audit of the Clean and Safe Neighborhood Parks account and ensure that a complete auditing of all expenditures each year is published and posted on a publicly accessible website. And then number 7, every 5 years, submit an evaluation of the program to the public in the city of Fresno. And then finally, number 8, provide input on an annual report prepared by city staff, which includes these 5 sections. A, an update on the percentage of Fresnos that live within a half mile of a park, update on the number of percentage of Fresnos assessing parks programs, update on the implementation of the Parks Master Plan, D, update on the implementation of the Active Transportation Plan, and E, update on the implementation of deferred maintenance and improvements to existing parks and recreation facilities. Also covered is section 7-1508, program implementation and fiscal controls. Section E, identification of high needs neighborhoods. Up to and including December 31st, this was the language from the ordinance here, in conjunction with the commission shall define the highest need neighborhoods as those areas that are located within census tracts that rank within the top 25% of Fresno census tracts as identified in the state's CalEnviroscreen 3.0 and whose nearest park is identified as being in poor condition according to the plan or is located within a priority zone for new parks as described by the plan or defined by the plan. 2, no later than January 1st, 2022, the city, in conjunction with the commission, shall adopt a new definition of the highest needs neighborhoods after conducting a public process to be updated every 3 years and included in subsequent updates to the plan. The city and commission shall create a weighted index incorporating the following data in developing the definition. You can see here we have A, existing conditions of parks and facilities based on needs assessment data in the plan. That plan they're referring to is the Parks Master Plan. B, the proportion of the population that lives within the walking distance to a park, park acreage per 1,000 residents, population density, neighborhood youth and senior population, neighborhood safety, neighborhoods of concentrated poverty, pollution burden as defined by CalEnviroscreen 3.0, or subsequent updates, preterm birth rates, years of potential life lost, and finally neighborhood composite mortality rate. So I want to go through a status update of these primary authority. As mentioned, 1 is conducting the hearings and receiving public input. To date, we've had 21 various meetings. dating back to May 2nd of 2022. Number of speakers, number of presentations, that's what that there represents. So number 2, the review of the city recommendations for the budget, the allocation for this ordinance to ensure consistency with the ordinance. As you can see, the status update here, the Parks, Recreation, and Arts Commission held workshops and hearings throughout the development of the fiscal years 22, 23, and 24 of the Parks Department budget and capital improvement plans as it relates to the expenditure of Measure P funding. Section 7-1506, the revenues generated by the retail transaction and use tax imposed by this ordinance shall be allocated by the City of Fresno on an annual basis with additional independent oversight provided by the Commission. The Commission made recommendations to City Council to fund specific programs and improvements each of those fiscal years that I mentioned above, 22, 23, and 24. Next, item 3, the primary authority. Review and recommend for city adoption guidelines for competitive grants established with funds from this measure. So guidelines for competitive grant programs is yet to be developed. As I mentioned, that's something that will come back in as we continue to work through that through the subcommittee and other stakeholder groups. Oversee development and recommend City Council adoption of the Cultural Arts Plan and subsequent updates. As we've communicated, and those of you on the subcommittee know that that is still in works, and a development of the Cultural Art Plan will come back to the Commission for approval. Number 5, review and make recommendations to the Mayor, City Council on fees related to parks, trails, and open space. We've held several workshops and hearings on the master fee schedule, which you all just saw back in, I think it was January, February, for the master fee updates. Those fees relate to parks, trails, reservations, anything related to the Parks Department. And also the youth fee waiver program that we developed through the Commission as part of a recommendation. Number 6, the review the Controller's annual independent audit of the Clean and Safe Neighborhood Park account, ensure that a complete account of all expenditures each year is published and posted. You all received an email with the memo linked to the annual audit, which was dated December 27th of 2022. And then every 5 years submitting evaluation, with Measure P being effective July of 2021, that will not come up till July of 2026. So we've got a few years before that will be in front of the Commission. And then number 8, provide input on the annual report prepared by city staff. Again, this is the piece that includes a percentage of Fresnans that live within half a mile, number of Fresnans accessing our parks programs, the update on the Parks Master Plan, the implementation of the Active Transportation Plan, and then the implementation of deferred maintenance. So as you can see there, the status update, Parks Department is developing the annual report. That is in draft format. It's going through graphics, so we expect to have that to you all here sometime in, I believe we're looking at April, Drew? April of this year. So at that point, you'll have an opportunity to provide input in the annual report, which will be reviewed. And like I said, staff's targeting April or May of this year for you all to see that. And then finally, E, identification of high-need neighborhoods. This is something that we all developed back in December, actually prior to December, but officially got adopted December 9th of 2021. That got us the new definition of high-needs neighborhood that we talk about. So that is December 9th of 2021 and is due December of 2024. So, and with that, that concludes my presentation. Available to take any questions you all may have.
In the absence of Chair McCoy, I'll just say I don't think there's any questions there. Oh, wait, we do have one question.
Sorry. On the slide for primary authority number 3 about grant programs, so the status update is guidelines for competitive grant programs have yet to be developed. And I think what you said, Director Aguirre, is that this is going to come back to us in the future. Did you mean specific to the cultural arts plan component or overall grant opportunities for Measure P?
Right, so eventually the cultural arts plan will come back to you all for review through the public, and then go to the public process, so yeah.
Are there any plans currently for identifying opportunities for grant programs outside of the cultural arts plan? Because when I read this, I think it's more broad than just that 12%.
Right, so at this point, no, we are just kind of concentrating on that piece of it, but down the road there could be an opportunity. But right now, our kind of focus has been on that to get that approved and those dollars out.
And as we go into this, into the May or June budget recommendations, whenever those would happen, can the commission make recommendations to pursue grant guidelines for utilizing Measure P funding outside of the cultural arts plan?
I'm going to rely on our city attorney for that clarification.
Can you hear me? We'll look into that and get you guys an answer for the next meeting.
And just for getting on the public record, the reason I'm asking this line of questioning is we, at almost all, if not all of our commission meetings, we've had community groups here requesting funding, and I've really felt like they feel like they're speaking to deaf ears because we can't do anything for them right now. And I really think this is an important element as we go into this next fiscal year to really consider how the city can partner with community groups to increase your capacity to provide program services.
Yeah, we can look at that with the city attorney's office and get something back to you.
Thank you.
And if I could piggyback on that, if we will recall, one of the recommendations that we voted on was to set aside funds for programs that would be a competitive process. So that was one of the motions that we made in terms of the next budget.
Okay.
So that would require a competitive process if that is approved by the city council.
Any other commissioners have comments or questions? Thank you, Aaron.
Thank you.
And Chair McCoy has jumped back on.
Oh, great. Thank you.
Thank you. We will now move on to hearings. ID number 23-502, hearing to receive public input on allocations related to Measure P, updates to the Parks Master Plan and Cultural Arts Plan, and annual Parks Department budget and capital improvement plans. Would any member of the public like to make a comment regarding this item? You will have up to 3 minutes for comment.
We do have one card from the public. Michael Lynn Lewis.
Good evening, Commissioners. I'm here mainly because last week, or last month at your meeting, I asked you or invited you all to come down to Maxey Park's Community Center to see how the warming center was like. None of you showed up, and I'm glad you're here, Mr. Aguirre, because I really wanted to see you there. As a person who was there every single day during that time, we witnessed a lot of things that shouldn't have had to happen there. Number one, we lost a lot of the community members, especially the children who come in after school at 3 o'clock to get a snack, to play, and to get some kind of relief. Those kids didn't come back until just last week when the warming center actually closed. We had to witness a lot of people getting up and coming up and just hanging out every single day. That also brought drug dealers to the Maxey Parks Community Center as well. That was not to happen. No services were offered to these people who came in, no mental health, no opportunity for jobs, no opportunity to find housing, nothing. They just got up every day and they just hung out around there. There were a lot of illegal fires that happened. It's right next door to a Valley gas station, which could have blown up, and none of us would have been here to tell the tale. So I'm really disappointed that no one showed up for this, and I hope that next year, If you have to go forward with this, a different type of an alternative plan will happen. And you can find some other kind of way, because we did lose the community. This community and this particular center struggles very hard to keep the families together and keep them thriving. They offer all kinds of services, all kinds of programs to the children to help, and to all the families to help them thrive. So this was something that should not have happened. We should not have had to sacrifice one area of the community for another area of the community. The next thing I wanted to ask you about, too, or tell you about, too, if you go out to Mariella Brown, if you ever visit there and you go out to that back parking lot, you'll see nothing but tire marks from where they come up with donuts. That's something they do in the evening, a lot of times on the weekends, and it's only a matter of time before one of those cars gets out of control and destroys a building, perhaps, or maybe a life or two. So I would hope that in the Parks Measure P committee or a plan, you would erect a fence around there, maybe sooner than not later, because the summer is coming up and this is only going to exacerbate. Thank you.
All right, and anybody on Zoom that would like to address the commission regarding public input on allocations related to Measure P, updates to the Parks Master Plan and Cultural Arts Committee and annual Parks Department budget, and capital improvement programs, please raise your virtual hand. And first up, we have Claire Statham. Claire, you may unmute yourself and address the commission.
Thank you. First, I want to say how much I appreciate the fact that we could suddenly see the meeting in progress. Up to that point, it had been a black screen that just said city clerk, and it makes it really difficult to follow what is happening. The comment that I wanted to make was a procedural thing about the minutes. I've raised this at one other meeting, but I think this exemplifies what I was talking about then, and I want to repeat it. At last month's meeting, there were a great many people who spoke to the issue of having the Fresno Arts Council be the entity that would oversee the arts grants. And in the minutes, that very long portion of the meeting is summarized. During unscheduled communication, the following people discussed the involvement of the Fresno Arts Council in relation to the cultural arts portion of Measure P. And then there is a list of each person who spoke. That's about as neutral a statement as one could read. And I think that just as we have agendas to inform the public what meetings are going to be about, we have minutes to inform them of what actually happened. And so to simply have a list of names and it says that those people discussed the involvement, it doesn't say what opinions they expressed, so that if, for example, a councilman who was not present wanted to know what constituents thought, the minutes would be of no use to them or members of the public who want to go back. So I want to urge you once again to not, with public comment, not just put down the name of a person who spoke. I do not see that as a useful way to present minutes and to create a historical record of a meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Claire. And next on Zoom, we have Brandy N. Brandy, you may unmute yourself and you have 3 minutes to address the commission.
Thank you. I wanted to thank you again. I'm sitting on schedule, but I realize Measure P is probably a thing to address regarding the warming centers. And I have no doubt with this that there would be a lot of planning for the future on how to make it work for all the community. But I am grateful that with this awful weather that we've had for a very long time in rain, that the warming centers have been a lifeline to our community members. And actually, in many ways, it has been a community center as it's built a lot of community. I see a lot of people who have gone there who connected with each other and been helping each other and helping at the community center however they can. So trying to clean up. And so I want to voice in considering the future budget with this and with the cooling centers to allocate, to consider and allocate the funds needed to be able to have this resource in a way that works for everyone, for the people who need to access it in well accessible areas, as well. Of the workers that were concerned about it closing last Tuesday while there was still a storm going on. We're hoping it would go on longer. And we hope that there would be the resources so throughout any inclement weather, this can be a lifeline and literally save lives of those. So I want to ask them to consider with funding possible positions with those who are unhoused, who I've seen helping throughout this time, cleaning and helping and assisting to consider creative ways to be able to work with that, to be able to make this something that is thriving and even better for next year. And I do want to thank all the people who worked hard, the staff members there that care and have been wanting to keep this open as long as possible. And again, want this to be budgeted to be in more locations and to be able to consider all their different resources, which we can probably send in detail that would be helpful to be on the budget to ensure that we can be able to continue to save lives and health and well-being of our community members. Thank you.
Thank you, Brandy. And the next speaker on Zoom is Shannon Tom. Shannon, go ahead and unmute yourself, and you have 3 minutes to address the commission. Can you try unmuting her? I don't have it's not popping up for me. Just one moment there, Shannon.
Hello?
Oh, we can hear you now. Thank you, Shannon. You have 3 minutes
Yes,
to
okay,
address the commission.
Yeah, I would like to thank the city for extending the warming centers in this unusual cold spell. But I have a friend who would like to make some suggestions too. No, you said what you were gonna say. Yeah. Yeah, I'm thankful for the city to open up the warming centers. But I do agree about fundings to opening up, maybe open up warming centers that are not connected to children's programs, like in different buildings, like abandoned buildings throughout the city, that they could be refurbished for temporary warming centers. And that way the people could have a place to go and not interfere with the children activities. I do agree with that. And many of the homeless are wondering why the warming centers are not open till this cold and rainy weather spell is over with. Hopefully we could have an answer soon. Are you still there?
Yes, we can still hear you.
Okay, sorry. Is it because it's the community centers interfering with children? What's going on? I mean, there's other buildings they could open that are connected to children.
And just to let you know, Shannon, this is generally a time for the public to provide their input. There usually isn't much of a response back for Brown Act reasons. So we're ready to continue listening to you until you have said everything you want to say.
Yeah, these people are outside in the cold and they need restrooms. There are a lot. I mean, there's not all the elderly were housed, and there's still people out here who didn't get placed yet. they only got like 25% of the people, like a quarter of the people who are using these warming centers, I heard. Hello?
Yes, we can still hear you.
Okay.
You have about 30 seconds to go.
Okay. Well, but I'm just wondering what, I just wanted my question answered.
Oh, and so this is a time for the public to address the commission. If there is a response, it will be very brief due to Brown Act reasons.
Yes.
And we have about 10 seconds remaining.
Okay. Yeah, that's just a suggestion to open up the warming centers where the children are not accessed and keep people out of the cold until the cold weather's over with and the rainy weather's over with, because it's unusually cold for this time of year.
All right, thank you, Shannon. We appreciate your comments.
Okay.
And next up, we have Robert McCloskey. Robert, if you can unmute yourself, you will have 3 minutes to address the commission.
Thank you very much. I am a volunteer that assists unhoused folks. I'm also a volunteer with the Fresno Homeless Union, and I agree with what Brandy and the previous speaker said. I understand that the community has, raised some issues about unhoused folks hanging out at the centers. They have no place to go. And I encourage people to have more empathy and actually go out and meet these folks. Brandy and I have been given rides and few other volunteers in the mornings. And I know Brandy's been taking them out there at night. And you meet a lot of disabled elderly folks. And people are just stuck out there because their rent went up, because someone died, because they can't afford their rent anymore, their spouse died. You hear these real-time stories on the street about how people wound up there. So over the last couple of years, I've got to know quite a few folks that use the warming centers. They're very appreciative of that. But in answer to the woman that called previously, the reason why the warming centers closed is because the city decided to do it in the middle of a rainstorm, in spite of the fact that there's more storms coming. We pleaded, we begged with them. Us advocates managed to keep the warming centers open at least over almost 90 days this year. I can tell you last winter, they only opened them up as per policy, and I can tell you the policy, which is set by Matt Dilnine of the Fresno Union, and the city follows the Fresno mission. The city follows his policy of only opening those warming centers if it's below 35 degrees. We tried to get that changed. Miguel Arias attempted to get it set up to 40. Talk to the mission. Talk to Matt Dilnine. He sets the policy for the entire city. Call the mayor. Go to the council. I encourage everybody on this call to show up at the city council meeting on Thursday to ask them, why do you set the temperatures so low? People can perish from hypothermia and exposure at higher temperatures, especially elderly people, and especially people that are taking medications, because there's people with diabetes out there. There's people with blood pressure problems. There's folks out there that are elderly and can't handle the cold. And as far as that goes, we had about 225 people using those shelters. That's 1/10 of the population that's out on the street. So I want people in the community to understand these people using these shelters need them, and I understand the issues with the warming centers in the community. I know the community uses them. I know that the neighborhoods get crowded sometimes with people with shopping carts and stuff, but I'm not going to apologize for that because I care about these people and I know them. They're not out there out of choice. I've met very, very few people on the streets that want to be on the streets.
Thank you, Mr. McCloskey. We're a few seconds over.
Thank you.
All right, and there are no additional hands on Zoom and no more cards in the chamber for item 11A.
Thank you. We will move on to unscheduled communication. Would any member of the public like to speak on any issue within the jurisdiction of this commission? You will have up to 3 minutes. As a reminder, this is a time to make a comment regarding anything within the jurisdiction of the commission and was not on tonight's agenda.
All right, so if anyone in the chamber would like to address the commission, either fill out a yellow card or approach the podium. And anyone on Zoom who would like to address the commission, please raise your virtual hand. Just as a reminder, if your hand is still up from the last time and you don't wish to speak anymore, please lower your virtual hand. So I see no takers in the chamber at the moment and no cards. First on Zoom, we have Shannon Tom. Shannon, if you would like to address the commission with unscheduled communication, please unmute yourself and you will have 3 minutes.
Yeah, hello? Yeah, I just spoke. My hand was still raised.
It was.
Okay.
Did you have anything further for the commission?
Yeah, I'm trying to think. Yeah, I have some issues with the homeless task force.
And I will just say, please make sure your comments are geared towards items that are under the jurisdiction of the Parks
Is
PrAC
it
Commission.
homeless task force? I thought they were switching that under the Parks Commission now, the homeless task force. Hello?
The Parks Department is dealing with the...
Hello?
Hi, Shannon, can you hear us? Hello, Shannon?
Yes. Yes.
Go ahead and continue.
Yeah, the homeless task force is not doing their job right. They're being very cruel and inhumane to the homeless. They're not throwing away just trash. They're throwing away people's walkers, their only blankets in 30-degree weather. They're throwing away their pet food. They're throwing away their food and water for the summer when they need to hydrate. And they're just very ruthless to the people. They throw away people's breathing machines, medications, I've heard. One advocate said that they bulldozed some kittens and they knew the kittens were in there and they bulldozed them to death. It's just very horror stories about the homeless task force, and nothing's being done to modify or hold them accountable. Hello?
We can hear you, Shannon. You have 1 minute to go.
And someone needs to modify the homeless task force and hold them accountable if someone gets sick or dies out there in the frigid cold weather when they throw away their only blanket, their only shoes, their walkers, their canes, their wheelchairs, their breathing machines, a child's Christmas presents. I mean, it's pretty ruthless out there what the homeless task force are doing, and it's really wrong. I mean, it's like inhumane and merciless. I mean, you wouldn't bulldoze someone's house, would you? I mean, that's equivalent to what they're doing. Is if they're throwing away their tent, that's like throwing away someone's house. I mean, I know they don't have a home, but they're unhoused. But still, I mean, the homeless task force is there to pick up trash, not throw away people's survival. I mean, that's just very inhumane and just that should be against the law. I mean, they're abusing their authority and they're abusing their power, and I don't think it's right.
Thank you, Shannon. We've reached our 3 minutes. We appreciate your comments. And next on Zoom, we have Robert McCloskey. Mr. McCloskey, go ahead and unmute yourself. You have 3 minutes to address the commission with unscheduled communication.
Yeah, I just wanted to, unfortunately, Shannon brought it up. I know it's not part of the Park Service, but I just wanted to encourage you to attend the city council meeting on Thursday and raise those issues. I just wanted to raise the issue again about this summer coming up, and if the warming centers can't be cooling centers, and I understand the needs of Park and Rec. I know the youth play basketball. I know a lot of things go on in those centers. I see it when I go there. I see the classes and everything. You know, I understand the need to have a community center for the community that they're in, and I support that. But at the same time, we have to look at an alternative, perhaps cooling centers that have to be open all day during these really hot days. I don't know what that is, but I encourage Parks and Rec to lobby the city to look at ways to provide cooling centers and meet the needs of the people that currently use the centers, as well as the unhoused individuals that are stuck out on the streets in this really, really hot weather. That's probably going to, again, every summer it gets hotter. So thank you for your time. I just wanted to raise that issue. And again, I encourage Shannon and others, if they want to speak to the council, you have that opportunity Thursday at 9 a.m. Come to the city council and talk to them. I agree with you about the task force. I am a writer for the Community Alliance newspaper, and I have written much about the task force, and you are certainly correct. They are abusive. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McCloskey. And next on Zoom, we have Brian Dixon. Brian, you may unmute yourself, and you will have 3 minutes to address the commission. And Brian, if you can unmute yourself, you will have 3 minutes to address the commission.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Very good. Thank you for taking the time to listen to me. I appreciate this. I am also speaking on the warming centers. I was outside last night with a friend that just became homeless, and it was brutally cold, as was the night before. And I can't understand why there is not some way that we can do something to have a place for these people, because it's really not cool at all to be outside with no blankets, no shelter. The warming centers are appreciated and they're needed and they're very much welcome. And I know that if you guys are having problems with security or needing to clean up or something, there are those of us that are more than willing to do that, to help pick up the slack, to help make sure that it's provided for those who really do need it. And being out here, I'm noticing that more and more people are becoming homeless that had apartments or had houses. So it's not like the problem's just going to magically go away. And unfortunately, the city and their motels, it's not working. And the motels are kicking more people out than they are bringing them in. So I don't even know what that's about, but that's a whole different subject for city council, not for you guys. But once again, I appreciate you and applaud you for having them open. But if there's some way you could, maybe extend it for a week or two until this weather, gets back towards normal, it would really be appreciated and greatly needed. Because I'd hate to find out that people are dying out here because it's that cold, and people don't have proper clothing or shoes, and it doesn't take much to start getting frostbite and just come to the elements. And I'm sure you all realize that. But once again, thank you for taking the time to listen.
Thank you. We appreciate your comments. And last up, we have Brandy N. Brandy, if you can unmute yourself, you will have 3 minutes to address the commission.
I can unmute myself. First off, I want to thank you so much for the presentation, the update on Measure P. It's really exciting to see the progress with different projects. I'm very excited about what's going on with Van Ness and some of the areas around my neighborhood and the continuation of seeing these things come to fruition, and look forward to seeing what's going on. I'm excited about Link being, again, in my general neighborhood and having that resource for our seniors. I know that the Tessie Wills Senior Center has been a great asset for a lot of people I've been meeting, and to continue to have those is a wonderful thing. Going back, I want to, since I wasn't planning on speaking on Measure P on things, but realize that should be thought about with the budget with warming centers. I want to thank again so much the staff there. There's so many wonderful, compassionate people who are my heroes, as well as some of the people that have stayed there that are my heroes because of their concern. And I ask there would be a lot of things given to them because I've seen how they care, that they've been excited about things being extended, about being able to and taking care of people and putting a lot of effort. And I know that doing overnight is not easy. So I want to thank for that, and as well as the community members and those who have been. I know that there has been a lot to accommodate, but do appreciate that. And I want to agree with agree with the others that mentioned things before. It would be wonderful to be able to have it be have this continue until the cold has passed, with another storm coming tomorrow. And I know that they don't make decisions here, but do want to publicly voice an agreement, as I was there the first night that it closed and out all night. And it was, even not being the coldest weather, it was very, very cold, which is also a reminder of what an asset and what a lifeline this has been, because even when it's even when it's in the mid 40s, it's brutally cold. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Brandy. Appreciate your comment. And there are no additional hands on Zoom and no additional cards in the chamber.
Thank you, Secretary Streamer. I will now adjourn the meeting. It is 7:25 p.m. and it was good seeing everyone. We had a really good meeting tonight. Enjoy the rest of your evening with your family, and I'll see you next month. Thank you.
Thank you.